for the webinar, Open Source Documentation, What, Why and How, presented by Ms. Swati Thacker. As Puneet said, this is the 58th consecutive weekly event hosted by TWT, and we are happy to see the response that we get from participants throughout these sessions. Now I will take a minute to introduce our presenter for the evening, Ms. Swati Thacker. Swati is currently a lead technical writer working with Informatica Bangalore. She has been in the tech writing industry for almost 11 years now and is settled in Bangalore. Swati completed her master's in English and Communication studies from Christ College, Bangalore, and kickstarted her tech writing career with Oracle. Swati is skilled in structured authoring, software documentation, HTML, technical writing, online help, and topic-based writing. Her interest in open source documentation budded while she was working with Oracle. Swati rewrote the manual for Tor as part of Google Season of Docs 2019 and improved the end-user documentation for Mautic as part of Google Season of Docs 2020. While asking Swati about her take on the value that technical writers can bring to an organization, her reply was this. The role of technical writers is not limited to creating documentation assets. Our roles are ever evolving and we are more involved in every stage of product development, influencing content across all touch points in the user's journey, right from user experience to user guides. Now, I would request all participants to kindly mute your mics during the presentation. The session will span around 30 to 40 minutes, followed by a Q&A session. You can send us your queries through the Teams chat window during the presentation. Smera will be consolidating the questions and asking them to Swati during the Q&A session. Alternately, participants can unmute themselves and ask their questions directly to Swati during the Q&A session. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Swati for presenting the topic. Hi Swati, the stage is all yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rahul. Thanks for the great introduction. Very kind of you. Hello, everyone, and thank you for your interest in this topic. And thank you for making time for this over a Saturday morning or evening, depending on where you are. So when the Tech Writers Tribe team contacted me to do this presentation, I was excited. I was thrilled because this topic is very close to my heart. Though I'm not any expert at open source documentation, I think I've just barely scratched the surface. I'm sure there are folks here on our group who have successfully contributed to open source documentation, and I'll be happy to hear your thoughts as well. I will be opening up the forum a little bit in between for some discussion, so I would urge you all to please feel free to add your inputs. So let's get started. Next.
Swati, just 1 minute. I'm muting all. You please unmute yourself.
Sure, I will.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me, Puneet?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So Rahul, can you go next? Rahul, can you hear me?
Smera, Rahul.
Yeah, Swati.
Can you go next?
Yeah, sure. Can't you see the slides moving?
No, it's stuck on the introduction slide.
Still on the introduction slide, yeah.
Okay. Oh, sorry, I was moving the slides. I'll just share it again. Can you see it now?
Yeah, right.
Yes,
Oh.
yes. Yeah. Good. Yeah. So the agenda of my presentation is very simple. First, I want to discuss why documentation is so important for open source projects, right? Secondly, I want to address the question of why should we as writers contribute to open source? What do we get out of it? And what is in store for us? And then I'm going to outline the simple process of getting started with contributing to open source projects. So I'll discuss the typical GitHub workflow that most open source orgs follow, right? And I'll also share a bit about my experiences of working with open source orgs as part of the Google Season of Docs program. And finally, I will share a list that I have put together of good first issues with documentation opportunities for first-time contributors, right? So let's swing right in. Next. Yeah, so I would like to start a little bit about, to say a little bit about what open source is. So it's based on this simple philosophy that more perspectives make better software, which means that many contributors across the world, they come together, they work on one piece of code or build one software and release the source code to the world, right? So that being the case, having more contributors increases the rate at which the software evolves, and there should be a way for users and contributors to keep up with this ever-evolving software. So, and project owners open source or release the project to the world for two reasons. Firstly, because they think that people might find it useful. And secondly, because they want more people to contribute to the software, to sustain it, to make it better, to grow. So this leads us to answer the question of why documentation is important. Next. So yeah, the first point being, if people don't know why the project exists, they won't be able to use it. It is as simple as that. And documentation fills up that gap, right? Next. For instance, the snapshot that you see is of a README file. Okay, a README file is associated with every Git project. Okay, and the purpose of this README file is to tell people why a particular open source project is useful. Okay, how users can benefit out of it. What is the project about? And then this document in turn points the users or contributors to the documentation, documentation pages, development pages, contributing pages of the project. So this is basically like the face of the project. It's like a marketing doc. Okay. Next. And our second point being, if people can't figure out how to install or use the software or the code that is released, they won't be able to use it or contribute to it, right? So because at the heart of any open source project is this constant need to build a community of people, interested people around it, because this is the only way an open source project can grow and sustain, like I said earlier. And how do they build this community of people around it? By seeking more contributors and contributions, right? And this is where documentation fills these gaps, not only for potential users of the software, but also for potential contributors. Next. So this is a snapshot of a contributing guide, okay, of an open source organization that I worked with. In my opinion, a contributing guide is one of the most important pieces of documentation, right? Because any first-time contributor for an organization would rely on this guide to be their like the handbook of sorts, like a guiding light. So this guide usually contains information about how a user can contribute to code, how a user can contribute to, a contributor can contribute to code or to documentation. It has information about how to report issues in the project, how to raise bugs, how to fix them. And then it has information about where the doc and the code files are located on GitHub or on any other cloud hosting platform for that matter. It gives you the structure of the repository. So I think this is the first place that can greatly benefit out of our expertise as writers. I worked on rewriting this contributing guide for this open source org called Mautic. There was no proper flow of information. There was inadequate, insufficient information, and I helped in filling up those gaps. Next. And to reiterate the importance of documentation, I wanted to present this GitHub survey. So GitHub ran this survey in 2017. And the biggest complaint from 90% of the developers using the software or contributing to the open source project was this. Next. Yeah. So they said documentation is highly valued, frequently overlooked, and a means for establishing inclusive and accessible communities. And this emphasizes how crucial documentation is for the growth and sustainability of open source communities. It helps in bringing together the various the perspectives of so many people who make an open source software, who bring it to being. So next. So now let's come to the question of what incentives do we as writers get? You could ask, what is in it for us? Why should I take time out of my regular job to contribute to open source projects? I'm sure a lot of us have that question. The benefits are more intangible, but there are too many benefits to fit in here, but I've tried to call out some. Next. The first one being learning new stuff. Okay, so this was the biggest advantage for me. So I'm not from an engineering or a computer science background. And to keep up with the trending technologies or tools or whatever it is, I usually have to take up different courses. I had never used GitHub or Markdown. I knew nothing about the process for docs as code. But thanks to my stint with these open source orgs, I got the opportunity to learn everything hands-on without actually doing any course. So at the end of these experiences of working with these orgs, I'm quite comfortable running Git commands now. I can confidently work with the desktop version of GitHub. I have experimented with a few Markdown editors. And also, on the technology side of things, I learned about how the dark web works while I was contributing to the Tor project, open source project. Tor is basically an anonymous browser, right? So I have witnessed a sharp learning curve on the job from my experiences, which I think is a great plus for any writer. Next. And then you end up finding a lot of like-minded people, who share the same interests as you do. From my experience, during my second stint with an open source org, I got to work with this amazing young writer, technical writer from a different continent altogether. She is basically an open source evangelist, and she has been making active contributions since the time she even started going to college. So from her, I learned how she connects with organizations, how she finds interesting projects to work on. We shared a lot in common, and I ended up learning a bunch of things as well from her. So this, I think, is very rare to find. Next. And it is, like I said, it's a rewarding experience to say the least. Of course, there are no trophies or medals given out, but when you share your expertise with an open source project, you get to collaborate and learn from others. You give back to the community, and that feeling of giving back to the community is very fulfilling. That's one. Secondly, when you contribute to a project, you get to make. In most cases, more often than not, you are like a sole technical writer working with a code development team, right? So you get to make independent decisions about the way you want to shape the documentation. It's empowering at the end of it to see your efforts pay off, as you create something useful. And also the usefulness quotient, I think, is very easily measurable in these open source communities, as there are channels, there are enough communication channels to interact directly with users. You can ask them for their feedback, and you can understand what's not right. And so basically, it's more transparent. The feedback is instantaneous as compared to our organizations. And moreover, every open source project at any point in time has so many open issues and areas for contribution that even the smallest contribution that you make for them, they really appreciate it, I think. And this is very motivating. The biggest advantage for us as writers, I think, is the fact that all our open source work is basically public, right, on GitHub. So this can actually work as your portfolio. you can showcase your work to any potential employer as a demonstration of what you can do. So that is a very big advantage. And since we're talking about rewards, I would also like to mention that you can make a few extra bucks if you participate in sponsored programs, such as the Season of Dogs. You receive a stipend at the end of your a successful completion of your projects. So these are just a few rewards and benefits to list. Next. Now that brings us to the topic of how a first-time contributor can start their journey into the open source world, right? So I have tried to outline the process here out of whatever experience I have. This is the typical GitHub workflow that you would follow to make contributions, and I'll try to give some tips and suggestions for finding the right project for your first contribution. Next. So firstly, you need to create a GitHub account, right? Next. It's quite simple to create an account as GitHub is extremely intuitive, right? Now here, I would like to quickly open up to ask if people know the difference between Git and GitHub. Is there anyone who would like to take a jab at this question?
Hey, is Git the desktop version and the GitHub the browser version?
No, that's a popular notion. In fact, that is what I also thought earlier. But basically, Git is a version control system, right? So you create a repository for your code or for your documentation, whatever, Git, and you install Git on your local machine, okay? And you maintain it on your local machine. Now, I create a repository, but you know how open source works. You have to collaborate with a lot of other people on that project. Where do you host it? So GitHub provides you that cloud hosting platform to share your Git projects. Is that clear? Is that making sense? To draw a simple analogy, I read this somewhere, so I think this would make sense. What Face is to Facebook is what Git is to GitHub. So what is Facebook? Facebook is kind of like an online database of faces. So GitHub, in the same way, is designed as a hosting platform for Git repositories. You create your repository in Git and you host it on GitHub. Is that making sense?
Okay, so if you did not have an account on GitHub, people won't be able to access your projects, is that?
Yes, if you are running a project of your own, there should be a way for others to access that, right? So you do that through GitHub. And GitHub is not the, yeah. And GitHub is not the only cloud hosting platform, right? There are many others. There is GitLab, there's Bitbucket. But I have mentioned creating an account with GitHub because 90% of the open source orgs, they use GitHub, right? For instance, if you want to contribute to the GitLab open source project, you need an account with GitLab because they have their own cloud hosting platform. It's called GitLab. So this is how it works.
What's the difference between GitLab and GitHub?
It's the same. It's a cloud hosting platform.
Okay.
Yeah. So you create your repositories in Git, but instead of hosting it on GitHub, you're hosting it on GitLab.
All right.
So you need to have Git installed in your desktop, right?
Yes, Git is installed on your laptop. Yes.
Laptop, and then from that, that application communicates with GitHub and uploads the files.
Yes. Yeah, that's how typically open source projects work. They create repositories and then they host it on GitHub so that everyone can collaborate on that.
Just as I have a OneDrive folder in my laptop, and I have a OneDrive account on cloud, so it just uploads the changes in files and makes both in sync. Okay.
Yeah.
I get that.
You can do a lot of things with GitHub. You can not only just upload. I mean, you can like create issues. You can open pull requests. You can basically do a lot of stuff with GitHub, right? You just create a repository with Git and put it on GitHub, and then you do the rest of the stuff there. So, yeah.
Okay.
So
one thing. So create a GitHub account free, or I mean,
it's
because
free.
I can see the pricing tab on the top.
No, it's free. You can create a personal account. It's free. Most of the features that you would need to make contributions are for free. So they have some high-end features for a paid account. You won't need that.
Okay.
Right. So let's move on. Next. So you after you create a GitHub account, the most important, the biggest challenge for new contributors is finding an open source org to contribute to, right? So there's a wide range of open source projects. They have plenty of doc opportunities, but it's quite intimidating to just start. So I would suggest ask yourself this question: if there's a particular technology that you've always wanted to work on, but you haven't got the opportunity to do that. So based on that, there are many open source projects in every area of technology, like there is databases, there's web servers, there's AI, ML, container orchestrations, and so on, data visualization, and a lot of stuff. So if you have any particular interest and you want to pick an open source project related to that, you could do that. If you have an interest in any programming language, there are multiple projects based on different programming languages. Then there are also non-technical projects that focus on creating documentation templates for open source projects, providing documentation tools for open source projects, right? So there's a lot. So I would say first instinct is to go by your interest and try to shortlist some open source orgs. I also suggest going through the README files that I just talked about. So every project will have a README file associated with them, right? In that README file, you can find out what the project is about, and you can determine if it resonates with your interests or not, right? So for starters, I have, for new contributors, I have prepared a list of open source projects with good first-time documentation opportunities. And I find these interesting, and I thought new contributors can easily pick up any issues from there and start. And I'll share that list with you all in a while. Right. Next. Yeah. Once you've identified your org, it's time to look for issues on the GitHub page. Okay. Now there are each org might have thousands of issues. You see the issues on the issues tab. I'll show you quickly. So for first, I would suggest looking at issues marked with these labels. Okay, so every issue is marked with the project maintainers. They label issues like how you label issues in Jira. You can label issues on GitHub. They do this to encourage new users to quickly pick up easy fixes and start contributing. So these are the labels you should be looking for. Of course, in combination. So doc needed, documentation. Next. And this is how the labels look like, right? So typically you would search for a label in combination with good first issue. Good first issue are the type of issues that the maintainers mark for first-time contributors only, right? So there can be good first issues in code. There can be good first issues in documentation as well. So, and every organization has a different set of labels that they use, but these are the most commonly used ones. So you would use these labels in combination with each other: good first issues, technical writing, good first issues, doc needed, something of this sort, right? Once you made your first contribution, you will feel more confident of taking on bigger and more pressing issues in the doc. In fact, even you can identify problems with the documentation. You can propose suggestions to improve it. And don't think that if you pick a small issue and you fix it, it won't make any difference to them. Like I said, every small work is considered very is really encouraged, considered big. So nothing is small here. Next. And this is what the issues page on GitHub looks like, the issues tab. And this basically you would click this labels on the far right end. And every organization, like I said, has a different set of labels. And you can search for issues in combination, right? Next. So once you've identified your issues, you get in touch with the community, and this is very important. You can't just find something and fix it. It's very important that you get in touch with the community, because what happens is sometimes the issue that you have picked to work on, someone else is already working on it. So it will just lead to duplication of efforts. So usually in the README guide or the README pages or the contributor guides, you will find information about how to contact the community. Who do you need to get in touch with? Who you need to identify who the maintainers of the documentation are or the code are, and get in touch with them and tell them that you plan to fix such and such issue. If you still haven't figured out what issues to work on, you can actually just contact the community and ask them if there are any outstanding issues for new contributors, and they'll be happy to help. Most of the times they're happy to help. So, and this is how the README looks like. See, here you will see there is information about getting in touch with the community over Slack, over mailing lists, a lot of things. Next. So next thing you do is you poke a copy of the repository to your local GitHub account. So what forking does, for people who are not familiar with it, is that you get a copy of the repository, a local copy of the main repository to your account. So basically, you are free to experiment or make any changes to the documentation without affecting the original central repo. So forking basically avoids any accidental goofing up of the central repo if you're worried about that. Next, you clone the forked repo to your local machine. This way you can get a copy of the forked repo on your local machine. And then you also ask the community how they prefer working with issues. Most communities prefer using branches for fixing issues in docs, right? So if it's a small issue, you just create a branch for your fix. So what branches do is it helps you isolate your work from others, and also helps you work on multiple areas in the documentation at the same time, right? So fork, clone, and branch. And next. And then once you've used, then you can use any editing tool of your choice. Most organizations use Markdown files. So you can choose either a simple text editor like Notepad, Notepad++, or something intuitive like Atom or Visual Studio Code. Trust me, you do not need any training for using Atom or Visual Studio Code. It's very basic. It's very intuitive. You just install and start using. And then you commit your changes to your forked repository, and you go to GitHub and you create a pull request. This is how you open a pull request against the master repo. So your pull request will be automatically assigned to someone from the community, okay, to review. And after the review your pull request, they might suggest any improvements. You can go back, make your changes, and again commit to the same pull request. And this process will go on till you have fixed all the review comments. And then the maintainer will simply merge your contribution to the central repo.
I have a question.
Sure.
Is pull request the same as merge request in GitLab? I mean, I use GitLab, so I'm not familiar with pull request. I might be wrong.
I have not used GitLab, but merge request, yeah, I think, I'm not sure. Is there anyone who has used GitLab? I have not used GitLab.
Like I create a branch and then fix my issue, and then I send a merge request to the reviewer. So is that like the same?
Yeah, I think it's the same thing. Yeah, it sounds like the same thing.
Oh.
So basically, they will merge your changes, but you will be given a chance to review it or whatever. Then they will, and they will merge your changes to the central repo. Right.
Correct. Oh,
sounds about the same. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
So next. Yeah, so then you see your first contribution come alive on their website, and it's time to celebrate. So this is the typical workflow that that most open source orgs follow. Okay, next. So for first time, next, for first-time contributors, I found this very interesting hands-on tutorial. Okay, for GitHub, this is called First Contributions. It's free. This itself is an open source initiative. So this is a URL here. This tutorial basically walks you through this entire contributions workflow that I just discussed with you. Okay, step by step. It just walks you through that. And by the time you complete this tutorial, you would have actually made your first contribution to this First Contributions open source project. So I think this is very good. It's a must try for people who are just starting out. If you are feeling less confident, more intimidated, I think this is the first thing you must do. Just it barely takes you 5 minutes to go through this entire workflow. So this is great. Next. Yeah. Now I would like to share my experiences of contributing to some open source projects as part of the Seasons of Docs program. This program, as you all know, it mixes tech writers with open source communities. The tech writers get to learn and understand how open source communities work, and open source communities get to create better docs, using our expertise as writers. So thanks to this program, I took my first steps in the open source world, and this is how I went about landing my first few successful projects. First, next, so when they release a list of open source orgs, the Season of Docs program, they release a list of participating organizations. So that is when you need to spend a lot of time going through the doc proposals, what they are expecting for each organization. And then based on your interests or based on what you want to do, you shortlist. I shortlisted 2 or 3 open source organizations. Next, I connected with their communities to understand what their expectations are from this project. So some organizations outrightly list out their expectations, okay, for documentation straight away. While there are others that leave it to the writers to figure out like what you want to do. Like look at the documentation, figure out some improvement areas for us and propose. So next, my last stint was with an open source marketing automation platform called Motic. I got my hands on the sandbox for this product that they use for usually for testing. Okay, so I familiarized myself with this product, tested out features, learned how different components come together, and then I compared that with the documentation, and I had a rough outline in my mind about what I want to propose. I discussed those things with the maintainers. I discussed my plans with the maintainers. Also in the process, I addressed some, just to get my hands wet, feet wet. I addressed some good first issues in documentation to get used to their workflow. Next. So the most common problems that I identified in the documentation were that docs were not updated between releases. There have been releases, but the documentation is backlogged. There was no proper overview topic. The landing page of the documentation was not great, was not adding any value from the usability point of view. The information, a lot of information was incomplete, outdated, and it hampered usability. But the most excruciating problem of all was that these docs were mostly created by developers, right? Even the contributors were mostly developers, and with no formal tech writing training. Most of the time docs were contributed by non-native English speakers. So there was a lot of inconsistency in the documents in terms of syntax, terminology usage, style, all of that. So after identifying these problems, next, I submitted a detailed project proposal about how I intended to fix these issues. The problem about inconsistency in documentation, that I plan to fix by implementing this. I had just learned about this linter called the Whale linter, okay, from my colleague at work. And so linter, the Whale linter is basically it's a plugin that you can use in your Git repo. Okay, it plugs into the Git repo, and it helps you enforce a standard style guide, basically. Okay, so it checks your documents for, the linter checks your documents for syntax, for grammar, for terminology, and whatever else you want to define in the style guide. You can use your own style guide, or you can use any of the existing style, Google or Microsoft style guides. So this idea was very well received. They were very happy to find a fix for this problem. I'm still in the process of implementing that. That work is still underway. And so yeah, my project next, my project was, my proposal was accepted, and I worked closely for 3 months with my mentors, and I established a rapport with other community members, other contributors, other community members, right? And I successfully successfully completed projects with the chosen open source orgs in both 2019 and 20. Next. It's been a very fulfilling experience for me. So much that even now, even after my projects were over, I continued my contributions in whatever small ways possible, right? And so this program basically just gave me an opportunity, to enter the world of open source. And I think once you enter, there's no looking back. Next. Yeah, so this is the list I was talking. I don't know why it's in white. Okay. This is a list I was talking about that I would share. So these are basically a list of good first documentation issues for any new contributors. I've used that label filter that I just discussed with you, and I've after using that label, I've given you the exact issues that you can just pick and start with. So this is not an exhaustive list at all. Okay, so these are just some orgs that I follow, and I found them interesting. I have not contributed to all of them. To some of them I have. And each one of these is a link that you can click, and it will take you to the good first documentation issues for every org. Right? The season, I've also listed the season of docs here because I'd recommend going through the organization listing on their pages, even if you're not willing to commit to the program. If you don't have time, it's okay, but it's just good to go through the documentation proposals, that the open source orgs have listed out. Even outside this program, without being a part of it, you can still connect with their communities, and you can still contribute to them, just as a starter. So it's a good database of such open source orgs. So you can just click these links and it'll take you to their issues. Next. Yeah, so for closing, I'd like to share the observations of an open source project maintainer. So I've got these observations from his blog. After their organization, when the organization was planning to be a part of the Seasonal Docs program, he'd written a blog about the state of his docs and why they want to participate. So I found this very interesting, so I wanted to share it with you all. Please take 2 minutes to read this, and I would also, after reading, I would like to open this up for discussion. Like, how do you think we can address these issues in documentation? Next.
Swati, you're there?
Yes, I'm here. So any thoughts on how we can, say, keep tech docs current? But this is the biggest problem that any open source org faces, of keeping documentation current because their software is, like I said, ever evolving. And why this happens is also because documentation, I think there are new features, but there's no documentation. Because I think it's mostly because documentation is not included in the CI/CD pipeline. It's the code is part of the CI/CD pipeline, but the documentation is usually looked as an afterthought. Any other thoughts?
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, so skill sets from multiple roles are needed to create good documentation.
Yeah.
Is not really true.
Okay.
According to me, because from the last 17 years of writing experience, what I have noticed is over over the years, what I have understood is there's something called generalist writer and specialist writer in our writing field, right? We say so each of us is good at something, right?
Right.
But
right.
every developer you talk to, at least I've spoken to,
mm-hmm.
they think that writers cannot understand their technology. Now it is like this is not going to change unless we try to tell them writing as a concept. We are not going to be looking at writing as so let's say if I'm an AI ML writer, I should know all about artificial intelligence is what a lot of developers think, but it's not true.
True.
The writing as a process itself is a beautiful art that we have to try to tell them, which I've been successful over the years telling people, boss, you let me know what you want. How I get it onto your table is totally the way I figure it out. So this is only a perception. This project maintainers observe that open source docs and writing process are immature when compared to software development. Yes, because we are talking about simplicity and they're talking about complicating life. Right. So they
I think what I understand of the fact that of his note about the writing process not being mature is that they don't have a proper workflow for documentation. Like how we have a process, we go through reviews, we ideate, we develop, we go through reviews. So they don't have that process in place. I think that's
the
what
problem, right? Because it's free. Anybody can do anything.
Exactly.
It's like on the road, there is no rule. People drive, it's accident. That's what is happening. So it's just going to take a group of writers forming a committee. And then, let's say if you're into GitHub, there are like so many writers, all of them form a committee, and then it's going, maybe a long process, but it's doable. It is doable.
I think it's a change in the cultural mindset as well.
Yeah.
Right?
So I will do anything I want is the current general tendency in the world. That won't work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Good one though.
Yeah.
Swati, hi. This is Shubhajit here.
Hi, Shubhajit.
Hi. I just had a kind of a different observation. So when I was just going through the Google season of docs, and I saw that they have a Kanban board where you have all the work that you are supposed to do or the team has supposed to do in a backlog. Okay, there's a column for backlog to do and doing and done. So I believe there is a kind of a process which has been outlined. Whereas I was just going through the detailed guideline about where to pull the work, how to see the work, where do you move your work. I think there has been a guideline also in the Google season of docs. It's just that I think, the people who are contributing to it need to kind of follow that guideline about maintaining it.
Yeah, I see. That's what happens. People who are contributing are not mostly writers. That's the problem. There are developers who do code work as well, and they try to do documentation as well, and they have a different process altogether, right? And not everyone follows. See, every open source org has a contributing guide. They have guidelines, but the whole thing is nobody's following that, and that is why that leaves the process very incomplete and mature.
Right. Yeah.
And also, what you see in as part of the Google's season of docs, Shubhajit, is also that is a requirement. That must be a requirement from Google to the orgs to present a Kanban board, to present the information, the issues or whatever in a particular way for the writers to pick it up. But in general, outside of the program, I am not sure a lot of orgs are actually following this.
So do you think that, if that's the case, then we should have people who are managing the documentation project to also get more active in those projects, because they can at least give some inputs from their working experience and kind of try to guide people how to manage it well?
Absolutely. Yeah, agree.
Hi, Swati.
Hi.
I have a question about how many hours that you had spent to actually do your work. Because with all our project commitments in office, I think it becomes very important for us to plan. Do you just only during the weekends, or do you earmark some kind of a number of hours during the weeks also? Because all these projects also work on a schedule, right? Or are they open even about the timing?
The projects, if you are interacting with them, collaborating with them directly, they don't have any timeline as such, unless there's a release coming up and you're working towards that for them. Okay. But otherwise, if you're just simply contributing, I don't think there's a timeline for that. But if you are part of the Season of Docs program, a program of this sort, then you will have an allocated period of either 3 or 5 months, depending on what you choose. Okay, so you are supposed to complete your work within that stipulated time. So yes, then you will have to allot a number of hours. So for my project that ran for about 3 months, I allotted 3 to 5 hours every week. Somewhere between 3 to 5, not more than that.
But when do you interact? Do you do within the week, or because all of them are in different time zones? If I understand that correctly.
Yes, the time zones are different, but yeah, 3 hours in a week was easy for me to do, because I would do 1.5 hours over the weekend, and 1.5 hours over the week. So, and you also get with these programs, the good thing is that you also get the opportunity to select your timeline. You can choose whether you can finish your project in 3 months or 5 months. And if you're just simply contributing outside the program, you can connect with the community and ask them, hey, pick up some issues or pick up some work that is not time bound.
Sorry, excuse me.
Sure.
This is Rahul here. Can we move on to the next slides also, because
I'm done, Rahul.
Yeah, one question here. Hi, Swati. This is Ashish here. So,
hi, Ashish.
So slightly deviating from this question, but something near about it is that even when we are using open source, when we are doing this documentation, that documentation can be even at your enterprise, where there they have taken this open source project, but they have tailored it according to their own needs. For example, you can have like Moodle is an LMS, and like I have been working on documentation for that version, but that was that software or that kind some features of Moodle were also changed according to our organization needs, basically.
Okay.
So
customized.
Yeah, customized, tailor-made solutions. So there, how do you, what all challenges I face is like, for example, first thing is the name, then we have other set of features, and we also have other set of plugins.
Ashish, Puneet here. We just have 1 minute left. Can you just complete your question, please, direct?
Yeah. So, do you face any kind of challenge in this kind of scenarios, or would you like to address something?
So basically, you're saying since you have tailor-made, custom-made customizations for that project, and you have to maintain both.
Yes.
Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Okay, I have not run into a scenario of that sort, so I don't know. I'm the best person to answer that. But do they follow the different release timelines, or are they on the same track?
That I need to check that. Probably after this session or somewhere,
Maybe we can take the discussion in the Telegram group if you can join.
Sure.
Swati, just in the interest of time, I will like to ask just one question from the group. There were multiple questions, but this is one question which appears different from the discussion. So Mohan asks, if more than one writer wants to contribute to a specific project, does that project owner decide which writer has to work on it? Do we need to submit writing samples to the project owner?
Is this as part of the Season of Dogs program or generally outside that?
Mohan, you there?
So, okay, I'll answer both scenarios. If it's part of the Season of Dogs program, they usually take more than one writer. If you have different project proposals, that is, okay, for improvement areas on documentation. But if there are two writers competing for the same project proposal that the company has, the org has laid out, then they choose who they want to choose. And that is why I stressed on the importance of connecting with the community. You know, even in the project application phase, during the application phase, connecting with them and picking up some low-hanging issues and fixing them. It gives them the confidence that you're good at doing this and you are like committed to it. I hope that answers.
Yeah. So we are coming towards the end of this session here. I'm sorry, and we are running short of time. We have next session here.
No problem. I can take the questions later.
Right. Yeah. So those who have more questions, please feel free to contact her or TWT. So thanks, Swati. Thank you so much for this wonderful session. And I'm sure there are so many things that many of us would have learned today, right? And thank you for accepting our invitation and giving us this thing. Also, there is one interesting thing is she has already written a blog. She has written many blogs on her GSOD experience. So interested ones can actually read her blogs. I'm posting the blog URL here in the chat. So if you want to read more, you can go to her Medium blog site and check out more. So then, saying that we are winding up the session here. So thank you all the attendees for taking out your valuable time, and that too on a weekend. And I pray that everybody stays safe and healthy during this difficult times. So looking forward to meet you all in the next session by Ruchi Saxena. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot, Smela, Rahul, Puneet. Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you, audience, for being a great audience.
Thank you, Swati, for joining us. And all of you, and Swati.
So much.
So you can join the Telegram group and we can keep the discussion on.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I have pinged the link in the chat. So thank you, Swati. Thank you, Rahul. Thank you, Smera.
Thanks. Thanks, Puneet.
Yeah, thank you.
So we will move on basically to the